I'm coming back to these guys. It's just kind of an easy topic to talk about, and I'm fascinated by their content, and I've talked about them in the past. And I don't necessarily want to be a podcast that just catches up on their content or even a news update podcast, because I am going to talk about some new shit again this week. And I'm sorry, it's not necessarily ideal, but I do kind of find it fascinating because some of it is stuff I haven't seen. And two, it does give me something to talk about, and then it kind of gives me something to possibly get into. So it works. But Yes Theory, they posted a video last week and then one yesterday. Two very good videos for different reasons. Amazing though. Like, if I would ever be able to meet some of those guys in person, love them. Like, they, I kind of, I want, I want to be what they are a little bit. Like, I aspire to be or do something similar to them, and the sense of what they do and how they just travel the world and try finding the best in everything, or not the best in everything, but to take in the world for what it really is, and not any like misdirection from media or just like stereotypes or anything like that. Like, they've done some amazing stuff and they've been to some amazing places. So I guess let me get into what they did this week or on these two videos. In the first one, they traveled to Syria for 7 days, I think. I might have that number off. And if you don't know, Syria within the past 10 years has been a hot topic because of the war. And the main guy from the channel, he's French. And so, especially in Europe, they've only ever heard terrible things. And I mean, it's the same as the U.S. news. All you hear is negative stuff about anything. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, but especially in the Middle East. I guess getting back to the Yes Theory Syria trip. So they went to Syria, and that was the whole reason. Was he has obviously grown up. They're not much older than me. They're, I think, in their mid-20s. And he's grown up in Europe, so they probably saw some of this news a lot more. And so he wanted to go to Syria and actually get a real feel for what the country is and what it has to offer. So he ended up going to Damascus and a bunch of other places, and it's just so lively, and kids coming up to him and never seeing a foreigner at the time because they've probably only grown up with the war or in the middle of the war because they're however old. So they're just struck that there's someone from out of town here. And so, like, stuff like that, and they're just going through, and there's so much culture and kindness where he was, and some of the places he visited was thousands of years old, and within how many, I can't remember how many years, but like in certain places in Syria, there's been like 27 or 26, is that what it was? I think it was like 26 civilizations have gone through that area and settled and developed and fallen apart, and like just over the millennia. And that's fascinating in itself. Like, there's just such a history in that region. And like, I think the first night he just happened to come across a group of high schoolers that had just graduated, and they were out in the streets singing, and then they kind of pulled him in and started singing his name and like, long live Thomas, blah blah blah, God bless you, like and all this stuff, and singing and dancing, and like, it's really cool because it's like, it's very true. You only ever see the negative in news, so it's like, to actually see the people that live there was pretty cool. And from there, the story or his trip does get, I guess, a little more negative, because then they do end up going to certain sites that the Taliban had held, or, well, no, sorry, I think it was ISIS, had ended up using during the war, and like old historical sites demolished and blown up, and murals thousands of years old painted over, and like just also like art defaced and statues destroyed, and just crazy stuff like that, which I think that in itself, to me, hurt me, because it's just hearing that stuff, it hurts. It hurts me in my core. For, I don't know, it's like a deep human connection, because it's like, to me, it's like, why would someone want to destroy a piece of human history, especially something so magnificent? It's like what we do, like what I'm sitting in front of, like, oh wow, I got a keyboard, a mechanical keyboard, like that in itself is amazing. Like, you take what we have for granted, but then you look and at these old art and structures, and it's like that, it's even more fascinating to me, because it's like, yeah, what we have is great, but like overall technology has just progressively gotten better my whole life. And it's like, back then, it's just imagining what there used to be and how people used to live, and how the hell did people build this, and the amount of time and effort it took to construct these buildings or these murals and then these carvings, and the skill involved. It just fascinates me. And to see that stuff that's lasted and made it thousands of years to then just be destroyed by some arrogant terrorists because it goes against their religion, or as an act of defiance to just destroy them, it's pretty mind-boggling to me. Especially when you look at human history, and it's like, we've only had like written language for, like, I think it's 2 or 3% of all of human history. It's like, we don't know exactly how anything was past like 5 or 6 thousand years ago. And like, even then, depending on what it is, we're just kind of, it's a guessing game, because we can't know for sure. But it's like, the farther you go back, the less and less we know. And it's like, we have no idea necessarily what has happened in the past. And it's like, even just something that's 2,000 years old to live and last as long as it has, and to be able to go see it and witness it, is amazing. So it's like those scenes, and some of the stories that people had from the people that were guiding him through the country was it was sad. It really was. But it's something you got to see, because it is the reality of the fact. It's like, yeah, it's still an amazing place, and you got these amazing people and culture, but it doesn't mean there's not evil in the world. And that's where, like, some of the other stuff they went to a I cannot remember the name of the city, but I think they said before the war had started, which this was like one of the main places that the war had taken place, but the city had almost 2.5 million people, which is about the area of Paris when it comes to population, I think they said. And at that point in time, now there's only 400,000 people. And they just walk through neighborhood upon neighborhood of abandoned buildings and apartment complexes destroyed, and rubble just everywhere. And it's just, it's just, it hurts, because it doesn't make sense to me, like, why something like this happens. Like, I get it, part of it is like human nature and greed and ambition and ego and tribalism and all this. It's all combines into what ends up being war, but it's still just it still doesn't make sense to me, especially in the society we live in now. It's like it's so different, and we've come so far to then still resort to such ridiculous things that cause harm to hundreds of thousands or millions of people for no good reason. Just is irrational to me, obviously. But seeing that was obviously very like, it was ridiculous. Not only that, one of the places they visited in Syria, which was quite amazing, was one of the last places that spoke or speaks the same language as Jesus. So it's it was like some city out in the middle of Syria, and I mean it had been affected by the war as well, but it's a dead language, and they go through and they met some of these people, and it's just the people you can find and discover when you're on these type of journeys is crazy, because there's a lot of kindness in the world. And I feel like especially to strangers in particular, when you know it's someone that's not necessarily from this area, I don't know, I feel like most people react in a different way, because it's like, well, you want to leave like a good impression on someone, and to represent wherever it is you are. So you always come across these, it seems like, very amazing people.